So, Sujay and everybody that's not here, I thank you very deeply, because for at least 15 years I have felt supported by you here very much. And I am sorry that because of lack of communication, we probably can't show the film that I really wanted to show. This show, which is about residential schools worldwide, and especially in Odisha. It's only a 15-minute film, and I open another event organised by friends. Quite soon you can see it. I also add a PowerPoint, but again, that's just to emphasise certain points. So next time, which I hope will be soon, I hope today's discussion will really begin to open up the subject. And I also apologise for speaking in English. Oria et strong agitationali, mute oria बहुत ଭଲ ଲାଗୁଛି, mute भी दुखाची, oria भी कहते English is taking over everywhere. I don't like it as an English person, but the issue of language is very much part of what we are talking today, because in India there are several hundred tribal languages that are facing linguistic genocide, and nobody gives a damn. Really, very, very few people understand the implications of what is being lost, and it is to a large part due to the school realities. I also want at the start to thank two young researchers who have completely opened my mind to the issues of private education. One is Madhura Gupta, who is not here, who is now researching in Ecuador. And the other is Raja Ramanujan Resi, who some of you know, who is here, and I hope you will also speak, especially in response to some questions, because both of them understand the issues very, very deeply. They're young minds, and they have opened my older mind. And I think that is one of the things, that education must not be it must be two-way. It is, we think of it as a one-way process, but actually we need the children to teach us also. So, yes, and also I must thank Azim Premji University, because they gave Navik and me, and also to Raja, fund for studying the cultural sensitivity in the tribal schools in India. Throughout India, in the tribal areas, there is a situation of cultural genocide that is being faced. And now that I've come to look at the education issue, I think schools are playing a major part in the cultural genocide. And this is part of the history I wanted to show in the film and the PowerPoint, is when the schools started in India in the middle of the 19th century, say around 1850, exactly at the same time, in the United States of America and in Canada, there too missionaries started schools for private children. Many similarities, but a different purpose. The purpose in India was very clear: to create a tribal elite to rule. And that purpose was fulfilled and is ongoing. And that tribal elite, we all know, is there, and that has a general class is there. In a way, it was not before. Not that it was not there before, but much, much more from the British use of the schools. In America, the purpose was different. The purpose was assimilation, and the purpose was cultural genocide. They wanted, as they put it, kill the Indian to save the man. They wanted to wipe out tribal identity. So in those schools, tribal religion was not allowed, tribal languages were not allowed, tribal dress was not allowed, tribal food was not allowed, and so on. Hair is cut short on arrival, every child is given a Christian name, and so on. Now in India, what happened in Canada and the United States is by the 1960s it was realised there was rampant sexual abuse. Many children were dying, even committing suicide in schools, and it was gradually realised they were a very bad idea. During the 1970s, by 1980, every residential school in Canada and North America closed. And since then, the Prime Ministers also of Australia and Canada and the United States have issued very strong apologies for the policy of assimilation and cultural genocide that were being practiced with the residential schools. Now in India, it's the opposite. If the original motive was creating a tribal elite to rule through, that's been achieved. Now the motive is cultural genocide. And I say that, I do not say that lightly. So, and especially when you look at the biggest example, here in Bhubaneswar, you will know it, KISS, you can see very clearly this. So I will come to this a bit more later. The concept of assimilation, this was the policy in the United States and Canada. The idea that, very sad, the tribes are dying, we treated them badly, or they were very savage, but they have to die. So the only way to save them is assimilate them into the mainstream. And this was the policy until 1970s, 1980s. Then that policy was recognised as a genocidal policy. Now in 1940 what happened? When this policy was still there in the United States, several people, among them sociologist G.S. Green and educationist Tucker Butler, they really promoted the idea that there should be assimilation. And it was some of the quotations from Tucker Butler in particular that I wanted to show you, because nowadays you can see those are clearly racist. But at that time, they seemed very enlightened. And, you know, when I first came to Odisha and I heard of Tucker Butler, he is treated as, you know, a really respected Canadian who brought education to the tribes. But when you see the model of Ashton School that he set up, and that he promoted, even at independence, in the Constituent Assembly debates, which were between 1946 to 1949, Tucker Butler really clashed many times with J. Alson Munda, who was one of the educated tribal leaders from Bihar, Jharkhand. And what she was the term Adivasi, that Jaipal thought Adivasi should become the official term. Tucker Butler very strongly disagreed, and so did the other non-tribals in the committee, including actually Ambedkar. And they went behind his back and they formed scheduled tribes, the official term. Okay, that was one issue. Another issue was languages. So Tucker Butler said in his speech, which shows his thinking in 1941 in Pune, the same institute that published G.S. Cooley's book, he says, of course we must use the tribal languages to begin to draw the child into the mainstream, in classes 1 to 2 to maybe 3. But he said that, but he never implemented it. And with language policy in India from 1940s to now, again and again, multilingual words are there. Even private textbooks are printed, but they're not used because the teachers are not learning the tribal languages. Mostly the people who pass their educational qualifications in non-tribals. So you've got, in a way, a kind of schizophrenia in tribal policy from Indian independence to now of the school should be culturally sensitive. In the Deva Committee report, 1960, it was saying school timings should be sensitive to tribal festivals and tribal working fields. So then all school timing should be done. Never it happened. So now all the educationalists, they say, the tribal people are being drawn to work in the fields by their parents and they're not intended to come to work.
it just becomes a mantra that is repeated, when actually the original policy was not followed. Same with language policy, same with many other policies. For example, if Thakur Baba was a real Gandhian, of course Gandhi trusted him to set up the ashram schools. You know the Nightingale, it is the hands first, the mind and the heart. That the mind should not be put above the hand. And the local skills, the local knowledge, it's nowhere there in the tribal, in the ashram schools. And of course, ashram schools from maybe a few dozen in 1940, they became tens of thousands by the 1980s. So nowadays we see reports from Maharashtra, Odisha, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh in particular, about sexual abuse in the schools. And this is in a sensitive aspect. A few states have reported, a few journalists managed to report, but very, very rarely is there justice, meaning that people really ought to. Because what is sexual abuse? As I said, sexual abuse was rampant in the residential schools in North America. But sexual abuse is it's a practice of power, and maybe like weapon, like rape, when it's practiced by security forces, it's not an accidental thing. It's part of a regime of terror, a regime of a power structure that's been imposed on people. I think sexual abuse in boarding schools should be understood in the same way, that it's actually, it becomes institutionalized and everybody participates in not talking about it. That's the kind of horror of the sexual abuse that's happening. But, I mean, as a sexual abuse is only one aspect. Another is that the language policy, like generations of tribal children have been beaten and humiliated in school for speaking the tribal language. In contravention of Article 37(a) of the Constitution, by which it is every child's right to be taught in the mother tongue. It's a complete schizophrenia between policy and practice. I'm going to cut it very short and you can ask any questions. And of course, when I say that the policy now, officially, India's policy was to be one of integration, meaning a two-way process where tribal people with cultural sensitivity are integrated, as opposed to the colonial era, opposites of isolation and assimilation. So India was going to steer a middle path of integration. But in the Calcutta Committee report of 2014, which I'm sure many of you know, he talks about an ashramization of private education and a covert, unacknowledged policy of assimilation. So that is, in a way, what is happening. That India is practicing the cultural genocidal policy of assimilation without saying so. And I have been to maybe 20 alternative schools in India that are using the tribal languages and are very culturally sensitive in many ways. Some of them are democratic. Children decide when they come to school, what they learn, and one of them is Eminent in Chhattisgarh. One of them is Basant School in the Tribal Academy in Gujarat. One is the Mitra School near Bhubaneswar in Odisha. And quite a few others I've seen, and quite a few, I mean, each one is a different model. They're all in a sense private schools, not really having much or any government funding. But the government schools and the main big private schools, they are really, as it were, regimenting the children and their minds. And I think one of the biggest aspects too is that in those early policy reports of 1960, the Eminent Committee and the Deborah Committee, they said the traditional educational institutions of the tribal life should be recognized, which is the Gurdwara, most famous. People know of the Gurdwara in South Chhattisgarh. What you call the youth dormitory, but it's actually older children, as it were, teaching the younger children many skills of the hands, many myths, songs, dances, ways of making foods, huge amount of knowledge. And of course what's taught in the goat room and what's taught in KISS, 100% different. There is no continuity. So when children are being removed from their villages and families and brought to KISS or to other ashram schools, because they are also the same model, they're removed from their culture. They're not learning their culture, they're learning traditional skills. And one of the things that many sociologists have understood is that when they go back from school to home, then they are ashamed to work with their hands. They have no interest in learning nature because they haven't even started. They're starting in early years to think cut off. And they're being humiliated again and again. I'm going to come to KISS now, because KISS is the world's biggest boarding school. It has about 27,000 tribal children there. And in so many ways, it is precisely the same as the North American. They call them industrial schools. KISS is an industrial model of school, meaning when they cook for 27,000 children. So starting with food, because food is very important for all of us, and we all know home cooking is the best. So one of the ways you see what is happening at KISS best is children go home only once a year from KISS to home in the summer holidays. And when they come back, all the families, they know how bad the food is. They want to make sure that children have some special food there. Most of them give some food. As soon as they get to the main gate of KISS, the bag is searched. Many items of food are found, and they're thrown in the bin in front of the children's eyes. That is the respect for the tribal culture. I mean, it's just one of the worst forms of racism I've ever met. And another thing that they do, because in North America, why they made residential schools, not day schools, was precisely to break contact with the family and the culture and the land. So one way they do that in KISS is children in KISS are not allowed to have a mobile. Of course, children in mobiles in school, it's not very nice to see children in mobiles, but here they need mobiles to keep in touch with the family. They're not allowed to have it. So again, when a mobile is found in a child, I've heard from many sources, the mobile is either taken away or quite often smashed in front of the child's face. That means no contact with the outside world. KISS is also very unusual institutionally because it is a private school, but it is not registered. It's only ST children, no SC, no OBC, but it's not registered under the Odisha government or central government's private department. And that means that according to one of the reports, which was the District Welfare Committee of Khurda in 2017, KISS has really slammed that report, saying it was politically motivated, but in many ways it's a very, very good report. And one of the things it says is there is no proper redress mechanism. If a child is facing abuse or any crime against the child, there is nowhere for it to go. Also, there is no inspection. So this committee report recommended very categorically that within a month KISS should register with the Odisha government's Department of Private Affairs, and it didn't. Because as it is, there is no method of inspection. You've got all these children from different tribes staying in hostels, and there is no method to see how they're doing. There's no independent inspection happening at KISS at all. And no bad words are allowed to come out. The media will never report them. But from many sources again, people are afraid to speak out, but it's known many, many children have died. Many have run away. This committee speaks a bit about the runaway children. One of the other unusual things about KISS is the children are sent there from all over Odisha by the police. It's the SP of the different districts that is orchestrating and putting pressure on families to send the children. Very strange. I mean, if it was the collector, you could sort of understand that it's police. It shows a certain regimentation or power structure that it's operating within, that the actual policy in certainly the Odisha government is now to send children there and to close down the day schools. So that is another thing that in Nilgiri, which is the area where I know best, within the last few years, all of the day schools in the villages have been closed down, except for in Kurli and Kamlesi. So what do the children do? They can go to the ashram schools down in the plains, in Chattakona and a few other centres. The DKGA, Public for Dongri Development Agency, in Chattakona it has a girls' school for 300, which I've been to, and they're now expanding that from 300 to 800. No boys' schools, but there are other schools that take boys, residential schools. In other words, it's forcing the children to come out of the mountains. And a few days ago, I met a Dongri boy who was targeted in a false case as a Maoist because he's not going to school. So if children are there at home in the villages, now they're real targets for the police because they are not coming in and learning the mainstream system. So at least 1,000 Dongri children out of the total Dongri population of say 10,000 are in either KISS or in the ashram schools. It's brainwashing. I mean, one of the things in the ashram schools too, the TKD school, as soon as the children are enrolled, they're given a Hindu name usually, just like in the Christian schools they're given a Christian name. The hair is cut short, the excuse being lice, but it's also another recommendation. Of course they have to wear a uniform, so they're completely divorced from their tribal identity. They can't go home to work in the fields or for festivals. And as for the ones who come to KISS, so now one of the other aspects of this industrial school model is the link with the mining companies. So with Vedanta we followed it very closely. And there is an MOU between Vedanta and KISS that spells out that Vedanta will give KISS 20,000 rupees for each Dongri child who is sent to KISS per year. Can you imagine the implications of that? It is, in that sense, a planned brainwashing that is happening. With Adani, they are planning a new school in Mahabanchi, Baripada. And there it's all linked maybe with the iron mining and the link with the ports in Paradeep and so on. In Nalco there are also similar plans, and so many of these different aspects are there. But I want to come maybe part of the main. I'm simplifying the argument a lot here, but one of the main things I want to establish is how similar KISS is in particular, but the ashram schools generally, to the residential schools that were so bad in North America and Australia and places. One is the food, I mentioned. One is the ornaments, of course we're not allowed the ornamentation. One is religion. Now that's a complex one here because when a child is registered in the DKTA school, it has a choice. Either it has to register as Hindu or Christian. And that, to those of us who know the context, is a very violent dichotomy because I would say as an anthropologist that most tribals, in some senses, are Hindu, in other senses are not Hindu. Meaning, most tribes have their own traditions of who is Shiva, who is Jagannath, who is Ravana. Many of them have myths and would come in for the festival on their own terms, but not ever use Brahmin priests. But now, they've been Sanskritized to the extent where one of the schools I went to in Chhattisgarh, you can see on the timetable, which is up on the board, there are many God children in the school. Of course, Gandhi is forbidden in the school, and Gandhi is a language, I would say, as old as Sanskrit, but an oral main language. Sanskrit classes at 5 o'clock in the morning, every morning. And a local person estimated, they say Sanskrit prayers about 30 times a day. So Sanskrit there, in that sense, truly being Sanskritized. And of course that's not just Odisha, also Gujarat, also so many places. Similarly in Kish, there's one big Jagannath temple, and Christian rituals are discouraged. As for the traditional tribal puja, it just does not have a place at all. Again, using ridicule or using humiliation or however they do it, it's just placing language. Another of the very sensitive social aspects is in Kiss the sexes are rigidly separated. So even brother-sister is not allowed to have free contact at all. And you know, in Odisha society, how strong high-value relationship is. It's a very, very, very sensitive thing. And in private society, it's the same. So when you have to begin that, not only that, of course, at the heart, in a sense, tribal culture is a very romantic culture. There is a lot of play in words between the sexes, and from an early age they sing boys to girls, girls to boys. So that is a major part of the culture that has just been completely stamped out. Of course, the knowledge is 100% different. Skills, 100% different. The break with home, industrial, the representation. I don't know how many of you here have been to Kiss out of interest. I mean, I have been. So you've probably witnessed what I have witnessed. That when any dignitary comes, it starts, and then has a certain thing with it, and then very special people there, and they're all together. It's, in terms of sound, I'm a musician, and that is the most violent use of regimented sound you can possibly imagine. I mean, we mentioned the police role, the Maoism and the closing of schools, day schools as an excuse. Also, in a sense, how Kiss is above the law. That I mentioned this District Child Welfare Committee of 2010, but before that, the National Human Rights Commission made a report on Kiss condemning very strongly the use of children at Kiss for political gain and for self-interest for advertising an institution. And Kiss responded simply by it did not respond. It has never responded. I guess the NHRC is often thought to have no duty, so they just completely ignore the directives. So, for example, this year I understand on Naveen Patnaik's and Narendra Modi's birthdays, the children did mass kind of birthday celebrations for those. And also in the Kandahar elections, I think in May, 1,300 of the children in Kiss are from Kandahar. They were ordered to go and campaign on the election for the Chief Secretary. And when some of them didn't campaign hard enough, or they were too shy to go to the houses and campaign or whatever, they were severely reprimanded and told, we gave so much to you, our Chief Secretary has given so much to you, and you are not. That kind of emotional manipulation of the debt we have given you we have given you so much, and you are ungrateful. So that kind of message they are giving out all the time. KG to PG, kindergarten to postgraduate. So, you know, this hold over the minds lasts a long time, those who are into it. Of course, Achyutamanta has risen massively in the last few years. He's now a member of the Vaisakha, and he's also on the national advisory body on mining, which again shows the very deep link between mining and KISS. And he was also last year awarded a National Leadership Award, which was a very big thing, by the Ministry of Climate Affairs. Again, completely ignoring how he has ignored these directives from very important committees. So as I say, there are alternatives to amend, but they're mostly very small-scale alternatives. And when I met him a year or two ago, I met Achyutamanta and spent a bit of time talking with him about what he's doing. I asked him one question because I understood the whole of how he talks about tribal people. I love the tribal people, but he says it's a poverty discourse. He only loves them because they're poor, apparently. So I asked him, is there anything you really admire and respect about tribal culture? And he thought, and then he said, you know, when I went there in my youth, I saw the houses they're living in. Even you would not allow your dog to live in such a house. Tribal houses are the most beautifully constructed houses I know, and tribal boys traditionally learn how to live. To say that, again, there is nothing he respects. I have an enormous respect for tribal culture. Adivasi Sanskriti, Samajnik, Vishnaskritti. And why? One thing is because the sustainability. That if we are to learn sustainability, the main people who really live sustainably is tribal people, meaning they live in nature with restraint. They take from nature, but after the puja, okay, it's ritualized, you can call that superstition. One of the other people in the world who is really living sustainably, and the indigenous people who have got most rights, is the Maori in New Zealand. So in English we have one word for them, taboo. And taboo in Maori means sacred. So every New Zealander knows, I don't go that mountain or that place because it's taboo, a sacred. So Ningiri, what happened, the Angola there to protect the mountain. In effect, it's because the top of the mountain it is taboo to cut the trees there. It is sacred. To Neobraja, I cannot say I understand it, but they understand it. But I respect that understanding because they understand the connection between fertility from the mountain and life below. So that respect for nature is one thing. Another thing is common property. In a way, the only real communists in the world are tribal people, in the sense that Marx and Engels were correct. Common property is the main value there, as opposed to private property. The British really tried to instill the idea of private property in India, and finally they have really succeeded. But still, the Gram Sabhas in Nilgiri, they not only said no to mining, they said no to being given little plots of forest, individual plots under the Forest Rights Act. In other words, they believe in common property, and they said the whole mountain is ours. And that is the idea. Obviously, when the British established the Forest Service and they privatised the forest, that is not the understanding of the Adivasis. They really still they consider the mountain sacred, and that's why all over South Odisha you have the movements to protect the mountains, and they are not just in a way for themselves, they are for the continuation of life on the planet, I would say, but certainly in all of South Odisha and really, really important. And then the other reason is, one of the key values of capitalism is competition. And very often they justify that through Darwin's idea of survival of the fittest, which nowadays I feel is come to survival of the fattest. It's like so gross that it's as a justification of capitalism. So it's not that there's no competition there, but much more important is the value of sharing. And if you look at this in sports, I mean, sports is competition in its essence. And of course, sport is very much being promoted in tribal areas. But I remember in a story of somebody who went to a Brazil tribe for the first time. And he was an American footballer, and he played football with the kids, and he was very good, so it became very competitive. And then one of the fathers came with a spear and speared the football through the middle. And he said to the kids, "What's happening?" And all the men came and faced the forest and spoke. And he asked the kids, "What's happening?" And the kids said, our parents don't like this sport because they think it makes us fight each other. So, you know, traditionally, yeah, tribal people are very good at sport, but the other thing is dance. And dance, in a way, is not dance like you see from stage. Dance is the most radical expression of democracy, that when two villages meet. Another is economics. So economic competitive, a good economy in economics' mind is a competitive economy. But actually, how the adversary economics works is exchange labour, when nobody is making a profit from the other side. It's a fair exchange. Another, of course, is education. Our education system is so bloody competitive that I've seen another father with a child and he got less marks than my child and hit him over the head many times. That's what are you instilling in children by the competition? And of course, there's no competition in that way in the tribal learning. It's really individual. And another feature of the tribal culture is you never, in a traditional setting, see a tribal parent telling a child what to do or what not to do. A child has its own way of learning. It will be grown where, from who it wants to learn. You don't impose on it. And so when the child comes to school for the first time, stand up, sit down. I mean, those are the first rules and regulations, so the discipline. It's like children are being disciplined for the faculty right from the day one of school. And of course the markings, the illegal beating of children. Then politics. Again, Jaipal Singh Munda, in 1949, in a key debate of the Constituent Assembly, confronted Nehru said, "We need to bring democracy to the tribal areas." And Jaipal said, "How can you bring democracy to tribal areas? The tribal people are the most democratic people on earth. You need to learn democratic ways from them." And that's, again, the values that have been just completely beaten out of the kids at places like this. And then law, most of all, that if you know about the legal process in traditional tribal, all of the tribes in India and many other places, the aim of the legal process is to reconcile the contestants. Truth will be shouted out, people get angry, whatever, and then maybe one side, maybe both sides fined. Then that fine pays for a feast of reconciliation. That is the end purpose of the tribal legal process. Well, what we have here is the Roman system of law, which is combative, it's competitive. One side wins, the other loses. And there is no reconciliation at all. So, in effect, that's it. This is just the starting point, as I say. Many, many discussions about the details need to happen. But I feel people have been very afraid to criticize Kiss because of the power of this man. Maybe because I'm not now living in Odisha, I feel a bit free to speak out. But the critique needs to be very, very strong. The film I want to show is a strong critique. But, you know, the critique really can't be strong enough for what is happening. It is planned cultural genocide. So, One other aspect I wanted to bring in the PowerPoint presentation was there was an article in the Hindu yesterday by Krishna Kumar, who is one of India's greatest educational thinkers, and he was actually the supervisor for Madhava Gupta, so thinking development. And he was writing an article deciphering Greta Thunberg. So you all heard of Greta Thunberg, and in a way I love what she's doing, like youth speaking truth to power. And I don't know whether in Odisha you don't have the educational spike yet, but children are beginning in different parts of the world to speak out a lot more. And when she went to America, when she'd done her official things that she went for, the first place she chose to go to was Pine Reservation where the Lakota tribe lived. And they're the strongest of the protesters always for the last 150 years against US supremacy. And she met another teenage girl, another 16-year-old called Tokata Iron Eyes. And they joined in the demonstration together. And Tokata, at the age of 13, 14, was one of the big people who started the Standing Rock demonstration. So they're to the youth, because the youth understand the future. You know, when they can see through the schooling at that age, then they really have the power to speak to adults. Like when Rita says, and Krishna Kumar quotes this, you come to us for hope. Like we all, you know, say our children are our hope. How dare you, to talk about hope when you are destroying the lives of future generations. And similarly, there's another girl in Ecuador, there's another girl in Canada who I particularly found very, very strong as a speaker. So some of these, this is as well the opposite of how children's minds need to be free so that they can become art teachers too. And if a child goes to school, instead of sitting there while the teacher says the Oriya equivalent of A is for apple, B is for ball, C is for cat, D is for dog. Like, that actually the teacher begins to learn from the children too. And Oriya teachers I've known, they've said, "Mara kuch shout nahi hai, bacha koi bhasha sabhi." I mean, there's just no interest at all to learn this, and yet it is so interesting. And Noah Chomsky, who I'm sure all of you know, he is somebody who's very strongly said, which Greta Thunberg has also said, like, if the world is to survive these really hard times we're all facing, we have to begin learning from the Indigenous people. I have an enormous respect for private culture. Adivasi Sanskriti, Samajni, Vishnu Sanskriti. And why? One thing is because the sustainability. That if we are to learn sustainability, the main people who really live sustainably is private people. Meaning, they live in nature with respect. They take from nature, but after the puja, okay, it's ritualized, you can call that superstition. One of the other people in the world who is really living sustainably, and the indigenous people who have got the most rights, is the Maori in New Zealand. So in English we have one word for them, taboo. And taboo in Maori means sacred. So every New Zealander knows, I don't go that mountain or that place because it's taboo, or sacred. So Ningiri, what happened? I'm not there to protect the mountain. In effect, it's because the top of the mountain it is taboo to cut the trees there. It is sacred. To New Raja, I cannot say I understand how they understand it, but I respect their understanding because they understand the connection between fertility on the mountain and life below. So that respect for nature is one thing. Another thing is common property. In a way, the only real communists in the world are black people, in the sense that Marx and Engels were correct. Common property is the main value there, as opposed to private property. The British really tried to instill the idea of private property in India, and finally they have really succeeded. But still, the Gram Sabhas in India, they were for, they not only said no to mining, they said no to being given little plots of forest, individual plots under the Forest Rights Act. In other words, they believe in common property, and they said the whole mountain is ours. And that is the idea. Obviously, when the British established the Forest Service and they privatised the forest, that is not the understanding of the Adivasis. So they really still have, they consider the mountain sacred, and that's why all over South Odisha you have the movements to protect the mountains, and they are not just in a way for themselves, they are for the continuation of life on the planet, I would say, but certainly in all of South Odisha, and really, really important. And then the other reason is, one of the key values of capitalism is competition. And very often they justify that through Darwin's idea of survival of the fittest, which nowadays I feel has come to survival of the fattest. It's like so gross that it's as a justification of capitalism. So it's not that there's no competition there, but much more important is the value of sharing. And if you look at this in sports, I mean, sports is competition in its essence. And of course, sport is very much being promoted in tribal areas. But I remember in a story of somebody who went to a Brazil tribe for the first time. And he was an American footballer, and he played football with the kids, and he was very good, so it became very competitive. And then one of the fathers came with a spear and speared the football through the middle. And he said to the kids, what's happening? And all the men came and faced the forest and spoke. And he asked the kids, what's happening? And the kids said, our parents don't like this sport because they think it makes us fight each other. So, you know, traditionally, yeah, tribal people are very good at sport, but the other thing is dance. And dance, in a way, is not dance like you see from stage. Dance is the most radical expression of democracy, that when two villages meet. Another is economics. So economic competitive, a good economy in economist life is a competitive economy. But actually, how the Adivasi economics works is exchange labour, when nobody is making a profit from the other side. It's a fair exchange. Another approach to education, our education system is so bloody competitive that I've seen another father with a child and he got less marks than my child and hit him over the head many times. That's what are you instilling in children by the competition? And of course there's no competition in that way in the tribal learning. It's really individual learning. Another feature of the tribal culture is you never, in a traditional setting, see a tribal parent telling a child what to do or what not to do. A child has its own way of learning. It can be drawn where, from whom it wants to learn. You don't impose on it. And so when the child comes to school for the first time, stand up, sit down. I mean, those are the first rules and regulations, so the discipline. It's like children are being disciplined for the faculty right from the day one of school. And of course the markings, the illegal meeting of children. Then politics. Again, Jaipal Singh Munda, in 1949, in a key debate of the Constituent Assembly, confronted Nehru. Nehru said, we need to bring democracy to the tribal areas. And Jaipal said, how can you bring democracy to tribal areas? The tribal people are the most democratic people on earth. You need to learn democratic ways from them. And that's, again, the values that have been just completely beaten out of the kids at places like this. And then law, most of all, that if you know about the legal process in traditional tribal, all of the tribes in India and many other places, the aim of the legal process is to reconcile the contestants. Truth will be shouted out, people get angry, whatever. And then maybe one side, maybe both sides, fine. then that fine pays for a feast of reconciliation. That is the end purpose of the tribal legal process. Well, what we have here is the Roman system of law, which is compatible, it's competitive. One side wins, the other loses. And there is no reconciliation at all. So, in effect, that's it. This is just the starting point, as I say. Many, many discussions about the details need to happen. But I feel people have been very afraid to criticize kids because of the power of this man. Maybe because I'm not now living in Odisha, I feel a bit freer to speak out. But the critique needs to be very, very strong. The film I want to show is a strong critique. But, you know, the critique really can't be strong enough for what is happening. It is planned cultural genocide. So, one other aspect I wanted to bring in the PowerPoint presentation was there was an article in the Hindu yesterday by Krishna Kumar, who is one of India's greatest educational thinkers, and he was actually the supervisor for Nalanda Hospital, so thinking development. And he was writing an article deciphering Greta Thunberg. So you all heard of Greta Thunberg, and in a way I love what she's doing, like youth speaking truth to power. And I don't know whether in Odisha you don't have the educational strike yet, but children are beginning in different parts of the world to speak out a lot more. And when she went to America, when she had done her official things that she went for, the first place she chose to go to was private reservation bed on a quarter tribe. And they're the strongest of the protesters, always, for the last 150 years, against US supremacy. And she met another teenage girl, another 16-year-old called Tokata Iron Eyes. And they joined in the demonstration together. And Tokata, at the age of 13, 14, was one of the big people who started the Standing Rock demonstration. So they're to the youth, because the youth understands the future. You know, when they can see through the schooling at that age, then they really have the power to speak to adults. Like when Peter says, and Krishna Kumar quotes this, you come to us for hope. Like we all, you know, say our children are our hope. It's, how dare you, you know, to talk about hope when you are destroying the lives of future generations. And similarly, there's another girl in Ecuador, there's another girl in Canada who I've particularly found very, very strong as a speaker. So some of these, this is as well the opposite of how children's minds need to be freed so that they can become art teachers too. And if a child goes to school, instead of sitting there while the teacher says the Oriya equivalent of A is for apple, B is for ball, C is for cat, D is for dog, like that actually the teacher begins to learn from the children too. And Oriya teachers I've known, they've said, what a good shout they have. Bacha, Koi, Pasha, I mean, there's just no interest at all to learn this, and yet it is so interesting. And Noah Chomsky, who I'm sure all of you know, he is somebody who's very strongly said, which Greta Thunberg has also said, like, if the world is to survive these really hard times we're all facing, we have to begin learning from the indigenous people.